Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. New twist on the missing students from Girls Science and Technical College, Dapchi, Yobe State, as the government makes U-turn, apologizes for claim that missing students have been found. Nigeria drops by 12 places in the Transparency International Global Corruption Perception Index, takes 148th position among 180 countries surveyed. National Council of State demands end to farmers and herdsmen crisis in the country, asks military to fish out armed bandits from the forests. And Syrian government forces carry out new wave of air and artillery strikes on rebel-held eastern Ghouta region. But just a quick reminder to you now that for more on our top stories and others, please visit our website, channelstv.com and youtube.com/channelsweb. And log on to m.channelstv.com to watch us on your mobile device, or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows devices from their respective stores. The Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have access to the Eyewitness feature, with which you can share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu, and then follow the instructions. And let's take another look at Nigeria's anti-corruption fight in light of the new report that has been received today. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the co-founder of Budget, Mr. Shion Unigbinde. Thanks a lot, Shion, for joining us on the news at 10. You're familiar with, analyzing the corruption trend in the country. We've dropped 12 places. Look at where we are in West Africa. Does this surprise you at all? Is this difficult for you to believe?
I think it's not surprising for people who have been keen watchers of the anti-corruption war by the president or the government. There's been lack of strategy or coordination in the way this is being pursued. And that means that we might do a lot of activity, but we are not getting enough results. When the anti-corruption index is done, the corruption perception index by the Transparency Index International is done, it says it defines corruption as abuse of public power, for private gain. And that's the question here. Issues around transparency have not been mainstreamed in the burn-up by the president. We don't have enough radical transparency. We have not reviewed things around campaign regulations. We have not talked about open contracting. We still had conversations that 65 million was spent by a government agency in building a website and we managed by 50 people. So when we say we're fighting corruption, we might be doing some asset recovery, we might be prosecuting people, but the anti-corruption war by the president is not coordinated properly. And the corruption perception index by the Transparency International says successful prosecution. Well, that is what they're looking at. They want successful prosecution of corruption cases. That's what they want to see. They want you to see that there's a strong will on the public side, that the anti-corruption war is much more holistic and much more stronger. But where we don't see that yet. It's
interesting you're defining it as abuse of public power for private gain. Now, one of the strengths of the administration, at least when they were coming in, one of their strongest campaign points, shall we put it, was fight anti-corruption. This is what they had planned to do. But now, here we are all over again, looking at what you said, abuse of public power for private gain. So is it just the way it's being prosecuted, or is it that nothing has changed at all? Because that's kind of what the report is trying to say.
We can't say nothing has changed at all, but if you look at, there are 13 data sources that the Transparency International uses in defining the Corruption Perception Index. And on the Freedom House report, on the AFD report, we have dropped on those index. So at the end of the day, it has an impact on the final outcome. We were 28 before, now we moved to 27. Now, we had 176 country before, now we have 180, and we still dropped by 12 places. So there's a problem with the president, and we should not be moving marginally. If this is the major fulcrum of the anti-corruption of the President Muhammadu Buhari's government, we should be moving in leaps, the same way it happened with the ease of doing business campaign. So that means something is faulty. For example, there's a national anti-corruption strategy document that has not been launched or made public till now. So how do you fight corruption when you don't have a proper public strategy document? We fight corruption and we are not thinking of transparency and accountability as a cornerstone of it. We fight corruption and contracts are still tacked on notice boards and they are not even still made public for people to participate. So when you put these things in play, that's when you can say on the perception level the public sector is properly fighting corruption.
I was going to bring you to that when you're talking about perception. To those who are sympathetic to the administration, who say we don't quite understand, you know, that the corruption is actually being fought, they say there's a difference between the perception of corruption within the country and the reality on ground. And so the perception that is out there is perhaps what they continue to see rather than all the changes that they're trying to make. Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference, but you have to understand that the perception marks the reality. See, if, for example, you say you are fighting corruption, most I've seen much is that AFCC is more energized and they're doing much more asset recovery. But beyond that, what exactly happens to police, with the reform of the police to do things? What happens to the reform of the ICPC? What happens to you doing more work on transparency and citizen engagement? What happens to you with the whole cost of governance? How is that reducing? Bribery, and also taking money for retail corruption, which is you want to get a driver's license, you want to get a passport. Are those things now properly standardized that we get it at the standard rates? We have not done things like that. So the perception still looms large, because by the time you look at all around this and the indexes that used to measure Nigeria, we have not fared better. And I guess the president needs to look well into the methodology used in driving the TI corruption perception index and ask yourself, why are we doing badly? Things around even gagging the press or even trying to pass even not NGO bills or the social media bill reduces our score on the Freedom of Information House and also having perception about corruption. All right, co-founder of Budget, Mr. Sheung Onigbede.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts on the news at 10 tonight. The Council of State has approved $1 billion to support livestock farming with a view to resolving the farmers and herdsmen crisis in the country. 3 former heads of state, former chief justices, the vice president, the Senate president, as well as all governors attended the meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari at the presidential villa. The council also demanded urgent military action to fish out the armed persons perpetrating the crisis. Our correspondent Gloria Umezuke reports.
Former heads of state, General Yakubu Gowon, Abdulsalami Abubakar and Olusegun Obasanjo exchanged pleasantries with the president at what would be the 3rd Council of State meeting since 2015. A minute's silence was then observed in honor of the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Dahiru Mustafa. After 6 hours behind closed doors, the Ogun State Governor, Mr. Ibikunle Amosun, told State House correspondents that in the face of the current challenges, the council has approved more funds for the agriculture sector.
It was advised that we should improve on the funding and increase the funding on agriculture. I mean, it was partly about $200 million. But if you compare that side by side to what we are investing, what we are pumping in the area of oil, that is the monolithic economy that we are all running, we notice that it is just insignificant. So council recommend that at least about $1 billion should now be pumped into agriculture.
Governor of Jigawa State equally noted that the farmers and herdsmen clash was another burning issue at the council meeting as they tried to proffer solutions through financial assistance by the federal government.
Those states that have grazing reserve, they will have support to provide watering point, veterinary services and other small services for the already existing herdsmen. And for those states that have not enough land to do that, there will be some solution if they so desire by the federal government to create those ranches, and the same group of people, the same group of Fulani will be there.
These solutions, including a military operation into the forests to fish out perpetrators, according to the council, promises to bring a permanent solution to the fatal clashes between the settlers, herdsmen and armed bandits across the states. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And we're crossing over now. Here's Markwe Ogun. Markwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, thank you, Ijoma. A former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Atahiru Jega, has identified the attitude of politicians who want to win elections at all costs as the biggest threat to democracy in the country. Professor Jega was speaking at a gathering in Abuja with members of civil society groups and shared his ideas about how to make votes count and protect the sanctity of the ballot box. He, however, appeals to the Independent National Electoral Commission to remain resolute and committed to delivering free, fair and credible elections.
As a proposed date for the 2019 general election gets closer, several political pressure groups are getting more concerned about how to make the votes count. At this conference in Abuja, the former chairman of INEC identifies the do-or-die attitude of politicians as a major threat to Nigeria's democracy.
I can tell you one of the big threats that we face, and I've said it consistently, is the recklessness of our politicians to undermine electoral integrity. And the Electoral Commission may do a few things to keep ahead of them, and they will try to do several things to now overtake and be ahead of the Electoral Commission. Because electoral integrity is not in the interest of those who want to win election by do-or-die mentality or mindsets. You know, and why do they want to win elections with that mindset and mentality? It's simple, so that they can continue with the recklessness of vandalizing state resources and obviously impugning on the fundamental rights of people and undermining the processes of development that can provide human security.
However, other discussants urge the electorate to take up the responsibility of making the votes count.
The work is for the citizens. How do we mobilize? How do we vote? How do we make our vote count? And how do we make our votes to start delivering development to us?
In a related development, a representative of the chairman of INEC, Mr. Shehu Wahab, pledges the commitment of the electoral umpire to track campaign funding during the 2019 general election.
Campaign and spending of money is done at the grassroots. And INEC has the advantage of having structures in 774 local governments. And we have the campaign finance monitoring team that has been put in place at every local government level, at the state level, and of course at the national supervisory level. So we are ready for monitoring campaign finance.
Although political pressure groups do not ultimately determine how elections turn out in Nigeria, recent experience have shown, however, that their advocacy can be very useful, helping the electorate make guided decisions on the candidate to vote for during an election.
When the news at 10 returns, the House of Representatives halts plans to spend $1.8 billion for the turnaround maintenance of Nigeria's refineries. Just stay with us.